Hey folks, how's it going? It's Rob Avis here with Verge Permaculture. I'm standing here with Tom Jackman from SImple Solar here in Calgary. Tom and I work together on multiple projects around solar thermal usually, and I asked Tom to take us to a couple of projects today to look at some of his solar thermal systems. The main reason being that Tom is really the only guy in the solar thermal industry that I recommend. We've got a system on our own house, which we featured on our YouTube channel, and Tom's going to talk a little bit about what makes his systems unique when we get into the profile and show us a couple of those systems so you can kind of wrap your head around why I personally choose SImple Solar, and I don't get kickbacks for recommending this. So let's go take a look at this project right now, and then after this we're going to look at another project, a Laneway suite in a different part of Calgary, which is doing some really cool stuff as well. And both of these projects we're featuring today have both solar thermal collection and solar photovoltaic, so that's thermal as well as electrical.
My name is Tom Jackman. My company is SImple Solar. We've been doing solar energy systems for over 10 years now. We do solar heating, where we have developed proprietary solar heating technology, and we also do solar photovoltaic systems. Before I got into renewable energy, I had a long career in manufacturing. Worked in a few different cities around the country and so on. So I had a career transition and worked with a couple other guys who had some good ideas how to simplify solar heating. They'd studied the issues that people were having with their solar heating systems, particularly in northern climates. We spent a whole year developing what we ended up commercializing as the Freedom 1 solar heater. The advantages of it, the circulating pump is powered by solar photovoltaics, so that makes it a hybrid solar package. And it won't overheat. Unlike most solar heaters will tend to overheat. When we size them for good energy collection in northern climates, then we have way too much in the summertime. So we developed an automatic heat dissipator. So we packaged that up as the Freedom 1, and that's what we've been selling ever since. Yeah, the whole solar thermal industry grew up around what is an electronic controller, the Delta T controller. It measures the temperature on the collection array and in the tank. And if it's warmer on the collectors, then it'll run the pump to transfer the heat from the collectors to the tank. And those electronics, well, they're generally okay. They aren't really reliable for the 25-year life that you expect your solar heater to run. It's usually just a temperature sensor that has to be replaced. So there's a reliability issue with that. That's a big one. And the other one, as I already mentioned, is the automatic heat dissipator. When we build a system that's going to work well in a northern climate, there's other times of the year it's going to have too much heat. And a conventional system just kind of ignores that. The glycol breaks down over time, and then the glycol has to be replaced after 2 or 3 years, and that is time and expense involved in that. So high maintenance. With the Freedom 1 system, the glycol never gets that hot and never breaks down. So we've had systems running for 9 years now with the original glycol, and we've tested it periodically, and it's just like new. There's two major camps of collectors. The original one is a flat plate collector. It's basically a big box or like a skylight, and there's pipes inside, and you set it in the sun, and it's kind of the same idea as sun on a black hose in the yard. The sun hits that, and it'll heat up the water inside, and we transfer that heat. But if it's really cold out, just like your black hose on the yard, it's not going to get very warm. And that's what we have in our northern climates. The flat plates just don't get that warm in the winter months. So along comes the evacuated tube. Earlier generations were built in 2 pieces, and they had some longevity issues. But newer ones, for these 10 years now, it's all one piece of glass that's double walled, and the air has been evacuated out from between that. So you have a vacuum layer, and so when the sun comes inside and turns to heat, the heat stays there. It does not get lost to the outside. So the evacuated tube collectors are much better in northern climates, and most of our projects have those. The irony is, with conventional systems that put on the evacuated tubes that already have an overheating problem, well, they just exacerbate that problem. So you really need to be planning to get rid of excessive heat when you have an evacuated tube collector. So these evacuated tube collectors, we use them in all the different types of solar heaters that we use, whether we're doing just domestic water heating, or whether we're doing space heating, or whether it's pool heating or hot tub heating. We do a lot of systems for off-grid people that want to heat their remote shop or their cabin or whatever, and it's just collect the heat and put it into the cabin. So all those different types of applications we've used these evacuated tubes for. And there's been a couple of customized jobs too, where they've been drilling on a house and those sorts of things. Or we built them into fences; they become part of a fence structure. So they're kind of neat novelty applications as well. There's tremendous amounts of opportunities for solar heating in general. It's a matter of us applying the technology. Evacuated tubes, we bring them in one size. You can buy them in different sizes, both bigger and smaller. And you could use them in some industrial applications. But there's another technology really for utility scale type of generation, which is concentrated solar thermal, which is, it's just I'd call it a different technology, certainly than our evacuated tube ones. But back to the evacuated tubes, the basic premise is unique, and I don't see anything usurping that. I think we're going to have those for a long time. Most car washes mostly heat with cold water, but those that want to heat the water up, they can use evacuated tubes for that. And they're it's a pretty easy installation actually. They usually have a long flat roof, and you can just set them up, face them south, and you can easily heat the water. Yeah, we've done a number of car washes. So we're standing in front of the Ramsay Laneway house. This project is a few years old now. It actually won the Mayor's Urban Design Award a couple of years ago, but it's still pretty neat. So it is a laneway house. It's a standalone studio on the lower floor, and then a suite upstairs. That's a very nicely finished suite in my opinion. So it's a very attractive building just to start with. Certainly a unique design. You can see it's got a unislope roof to maximize the solar potential facing south. When I was first contacted by this gentleman who wanted to build this project, and I proposed a rather conservative solar hot water heater and a little bit of PV, and he looked at it and he said, well, that's not enough, we need more. So I sent the homeowner a proposal for a rather conservative solar system, and he took a look at it and said, well, he needs more. He wanted to do as much solar as possible. And so that's what you see in the end. We've got a total of 6 30 tube solar collectors, 3 up high on the roof and 3 on the wall, as well as I think it's 5 kilowatts of solar PV flush mounted on the roof. So he's got a lot of solar up there, more than the suite needs. So this laneway house is actually net positive. It makes more energy than it uses, and it's connected to the house. So electrically, we're back feeding the house quite often, certainly on a sunny day like today. And also it makes more heat than the suite often uses, and so it's heating the domestic water, and also contributes to space heating in the main house on the property. To transfer the heat, there's an insulated line that was run from the laneway into the house. Each solar thermal collector, 30 tube collector, will generate approximately 7,500 BTUs when the sun's shining on it. So that makes 45,000 BTUs equivalent when the sun's shining on it. So it may not sound too much when we're used to gas equipment. That's about the same as on a regular hot water heater. But this happens whenever the sun's shining, that heat's on. So you got to be ready to accommodate it. It's designed to be energy efficient structure. It's not excessively so. I think the walls will be about R36 or something like that. And it's got a fair bit of spray foam insulation. It's a smaller building, but it's quite airtight, and triple glazed windows. There's no certification that was undertaken as part of the build, but there's a lot of good building habits were incorporated into it. The Freedom One solar system is simple. That's why we call our company SImple Solar originally. All solar systems, well, most solar systems are going to want to heat a tank, and it gives you a buffer. So when the sun is shining, we're going to put heat into a tank. The way we do that is, you saw the collectors outside on the roof and on the wall, and we'll run a glycol fluid up to the collectors, and the glycol will be heated by the collector array. So there's always going to be 2 pipes, one going up and collecting the heat, coming back obviously hotter. So in our case, we send that glycol with a little pump in this device here. This is our pump station, and there's a little pump in there, and it's connected by the photovoltaic panels that were mounted on the solar thermal array. So here's the cord that runs the pump, and there's the pipes, and there's the pump station, and there's the tank, and that's basically all there is to the system. It's simple. So in this case, in this building, they put an in-floor heating tube, so it's pipes that go in the floor, and they come up in this far corner to a manifold, and we're taking heat out of this tank through a coil. So there's a heat exchanger in the bottom that we're putting the solar heat in, and there's a heat exchanger in the top that we're taking the heat out, and that goes to the pump over there. That runs when the thermostat on the wall says, hey, send me some heat, I'm too cold, and turns a regular pump on that's wall mounted beside the manifold. When we've had really large heating demands and we've had some cloudy weather, then there's not enough solar heat to keep the tank hot, and there's an electric immersion heater that's mounted in the side that uses electricity that will keep the tank at a minimum temperature. And when the tank's there, then the electric turns off. And the tank is both domestic water coming through it and heat comes out of that for the in-floor heating system. Here we have a small evacuated tube. It's good for demonstration purposes. This is the tip of the heat pipe here. So there's 2 layers of glass in this type of tube, and the air in between the layers of glass has been evacuated, hence the name evacuated tube. And then when the sun comes in to the inner layer, it turns to heat, and it stays there because there's a vacuum and the heat won't go out through the vacuum. So all the heat is transferred to the heat pipe, which is this copper pipe, and the heat pipe conducts all the heat over the whole height of the tube up to this tip. And so when this is out in the sun, this tip will get really, really hot and burn you pretty easily. Another feature of these things that they developed because of the risk of losing the vacuum is, which this one has, it's been dropped. You can see somebody dropped it and cracked there. So there's no longer a vacuum. And the white bottom on one that has, that's called a getter, it was originally silver. And when oxygen gets into that material turns to white. So it's pretty easy to tell from a distance even that this tube has been damaged and needs to be replaced.
Yeah, my name is Cornelius Koster. I live in Ramsay, Calgary, Alberta. My job, daytime basis, is being a utility scale solar developer for a German solar company or renewable company, GP Joule. And we are luckily very busy these days after a couple of years of waiting. But the solar market on the utility scale has finally taken off, and we're happy to be where we are in Alberta. Growing up in Holland, I've always been very, very much involved with the environment and the green movement, if you want to call it that, and that being Greenpeace. And now moving into later stages in life where you have the ability to put some of your professional time towards making an impact and a difference in the renewable world, but also in the climate change. This Laneway house with the solar on it basically is a natural progression of my daily and my past life. I get people come and knock on my door all day long, and by that I mean probably once a month. So over the past 3 or 4 years, I've given maybe 20, 30, 40 tours. We're part of the Green Doors Open event every year here in Calgary. I've had school classes come through here probably 5 times. I've handed out my design of the Laneway house, including some of my solar expertise on this building, to other landowners who have duplicated the Laneway house. This Laneway house, on its own, I wouldn't say it's necessarily that super special, except that obviously we have the solar panels and we have thermal solar, but we incorporated that with some basics of the passive house scenario or design. So no south-facing or no north-facing windows, lots of south-facing windows, in-floor heating, over-engineered walls, exterior insulation, combined with good wall insulation. Simple design, very little heat loss, and cheap to build. So this Laneway house has a 5.5 kilowatt PV system combined with a 12.5 kilowatt thermal system, which is in reality overproducing the needs for this Laneway house. So during construction, we dug a trench to the main house in the front of the property, and that is basically supplying any excess electricity and heat to our house, both on the electrical side and the thermal side. I'd say these are systems that would be smart and perfect for people who have a long-term vision of how people should really live, based on a energy consumption scenario, but also on an income level, because having a suite up on top of your secondary building is a lovely contribution to your monthly income. Plus, you're obviously saving on your power and heating bill. So if you have the means, it is probably one of the best investments you can do. If anything, you could call this, hedging of power prices and fuel.
So this is another one of our solar projects. It has both solar thermal and solar electric on the roof of this bungalow that, was a rather staid looking bungalow, and it's certainly highlighted now. The 5 banks of solar thermal is the full length of the bungalow, and it does definitely all their domestic water heating and a whole bunch of space heating. So the space heating system is baseboard heaters, hydronic baseboard heaters put around in the basement, and that heat then rises up through the whole house. And the grid-tied solar photovoltaic system makes this energy conscious family pretty much net zero electric. And they have still a gas furnace for the coldest days of winter, but I know, having talked to them, that they really grumble about the monthly fixed gas bill when they only really use any gas, for a couple of months in the wintertime. Yeah, we'll go inside and down to the basement, and there we'll see the solar tank and the SImple Solar pump station, and we can also see the hydronic baseboard heating system. So here is the mechanical area for this installation. You can see in the back, a little bit in the shadows, the large solar tank, 120-gallon tank, and this is a SImple Solar pump station that's moving the glycol between the collectors and the tank, and the hot glycol goes into a coil in the bottom of the tank and transfers the heat into the tank. This installation also is using an upper coil from the tank to heat the hydronic baseboard heaters that are around the basement, and they get all piped into a manifold in the back corner, and there's a little AC pump. So when the thermostat on the wall says, hey, we want some heat down here, it turns on that AC pump, which sends fluid through the radiators and back to the tank, where it picks up heat from the tank. This tank also has backup electric element right down here. So if they've used all the hot water, or all the heat's been used up and the sun's not shining, then they don't run out of hot water. The electric element will come on, and I'm pretty sure seasonally they turn that off. They've got lots of collectors and pretty big tank, so they can turn that off, except for this time of year. We're into November now. We're just a few weeks away from the shortest day of the year. So this project behind us is a good example of a family that really wants to tread lighter on our earth. They put out a fraction of the greenhouse gas emissions that most families do. In addition to the solar, before they did the solar, they increased the insulation of the whole home, and they upgraded the windows and doors and so on. And then the solar was the final piece. And by doing both those things, they literally are almost off-grid type of people. So, it's not that hard. You wrap your head around it, and you can literally cut your own greenhouse gas emissions by a half or 3/4, which was I've done in my case. It's in that range as well, and it's still the same house. And another big reason to do it, being a little more selfish, is that it's a lot more comfortable living in that kind of a home, and you just feel cleaner when you're not making pollution just to stay home and shower and do the dishes. You're not making pollution. You just feel better all around.
Hey folks, hopefully you found that interesting. I know that I'm completely addicted to solar thermal and solar photovoltaic systems for different reasons, but really, as Tom said, it's not that hard to adopt these things. One of the things that I think is really important to keep in mind, a lot of people get really wrapped up in the costs versus the current cost of gas or electricity. The way that the markets are kind of working right now is that a lot of the costs are being pushed onto transmission versus the actual commodity itself, which can dissuade some people from actually engaging in this. However, if you've been following my YouTube channel and my blog, the energy situation that we find ourselves in North America is not as black and white as it might seem. And we are all dependent on a readily available and abundant source of natural gas just to keep our houses livable. Most of the houses in Calgary and in the north, should the natural gas shut off or should the power shut off for any significant period of time, would be completely uninhabitable. In fact, a lot of the architecture that was created and installed in these cities over the last 50 years, even the last 100 years, is markedly similar to what you'd find in California, which is a complete joke. And so when we see projects like this that are showing responsible leadership, I mean, there's all sorts of other nuance in this house that we're not going to talk about today, but in terms of insulation, upgrading windows, photovoltaics, as we've talked about, and solar thermal, this is really a hallmark, a showpiece with regards to how North Americans can live. In a future episode, I might come back and try and convince the homeowners to let me take a walk around their property as well, because one of the other things that's going on here is it's not just an energy example. They've got food production. There's a beehive over to my right. And the interesting thing is that when people start taking responsibility for their energy, for their food, for their water, for the waste that they produce, or the waste that they upcycle, the whole world gets better. And this is just one of those hallmark examples in Calgary that I've been dying to showcase for a really long time. And so hopefully you found that interesting and insightful as well as inspiring. And stay tuned to our channel for future updates on projects like this. There's just so many good news stories out there, and I really want to make sure that we're getting those across to you guys. If you found this helpful, give us a like. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you hit it twice, you'll get notified when we go live as well as when we update our channel. If you want to find out a little bit more about Tom Jackman and SImple Solar, I'll put a link to his company in the show notes below. And if you have any questions, definitely click on that link and send him an email. He's a great guy to chat with and super knowledgeable within the solar industry. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.